What's up? What's up? What's up? It's Curry Spice back with another video. And this video is about one of my favorite YouTubers. Her name is Alyssa Forever. And she posted a recent episode about her visit to the therapist. And her therapist was able to unpack the consequences, or should I say, the challenges that she's facing that was deep rooted from her childhood that she's bringing into her adulthood. And I know exactly what that's like because I'm experiencing that as well. So this is her story.
It says, childhood conditioning creates the environment of adult relationships. If you had a conflicted relationship with a parent, one where you had to betray yourself to receive love, you'll find self-betrayal a normal part of a partnership. Let's say your father was a violent alcoholic. You became his caretaker even before your teenage years. He showed love and appreciation in almost non-existent micro moments. Love will look like caretaking and acceptance of poor behavior. Or your mother depended on you emotionally. She was single and needed you to meet needs well beyond what you were emotionally capable at the time. Love will look like meeting the needs of another at the expense of your own. Maybe your father was a controlling, cold man. He had many affairs, but your mother turned a blind eye. He barely engaged with you unless he was criticizing. With time, you learn that he gave you rare affection when you achieved something. Love will look like outside validation and harsh criticism. You'll engage in high-risk sexual behavior or find someone else who does. We speak often about red flags and warning signs, but childhood trauma changes how we perceive them. Objectively, we know these aren't healthy behaviors, but it doesn't matter because the brain seeks the familiar. We become shameful of repeating these cycles because we don't understand we are unconsciously attracted to them behind awareness. The body, addicted to certain emotional states, neurotransmitters, and stress hormones unconsciously seek dynamics where the same emotional environment exists. Without practicing conscious awareness, we repeat. Without engaging in the reparenting process, we seek another human being to act out what we have not yet healed. What? So you mean to tell me all this bullshit that I put up with is because my brain is seeking the familiar? It's used to being mistreated and it just wants it and it just needs to indulge on that feeling again?
Yeah, so that stuff is deep. It's so deep. Um, I watched this episode and my mind was just blown. Um, it feels really good to put into, or even to put a phrase to what exactly is deep rooted within you. You can't put a name on it or a diagnosis on it because you're not a therapist. So there's just something in you that you feel like just isn't right, but you just don't know how to go about it. You don't know what the problem is. You just know something's there and it's blocking you from your blessing. So, um, from like, if you guys watched the high school reunion episode, you know that my grandmother raised me up until she passed away of breast cancer when I was 14. And my parents were about 16, 17 or so when they conceived me. And, you know, so my grandmother came in the picture because she was the guiding light that I needed in that moment. And my parents couldn't be that for financial reasons, or maybe even emotionally, for emotional reasons, as my parents have underwent a lot in their life and they're emotionally unavailable for me. And that's something that sticks with me to this day. I talk to my mother. We have an okay relationship for what it is. Um, my father, I'm not speaking to him at the moment because I'm kind of undergoing a like a personal growth, and I'm not exactly sure how I can approach our relationship in the future, because there's some unresolved anger there. Um, So one of the things here, like I understand everything she said in that snippet right there, everything resonated with me as well. Um, so I made some notes. I just jotted some stuff down like chicken scratch. So there was things that she said that she went over a list with her therapist, and I'm telling you, everything in this episode resonates with me too. Um, so the therapist had her list down like some factors that she think are contributing to her unconscious attraction to abuse in relationships. And like I said, I have this as well. So her number one is people don't have, like, she feels like people have to show up for her. Um, like she's expecting even like strangers off the street to even like show up for her. Everybody she believes should show up for her. And I understand that because I have this strong need for people to show up for me as well. And I noticed that it just it's unrealistic because people just don't do that. Like in the perfect world, yeah, it would be nice if we could all show up for each other, but it doesn't quite work like that. Um, and another thing is, other people don't care about my accomplishments. So yeah, so this is what she said, and I'm agreeing with her because I feel like people don't care about my accomplishments unless it benefits them somehow. Um, so I believe the world to be like a dog eat dog kind of setup where everybody's out for themselves, you know, and there's a part of me that wants to believe that there's good out there, and there is good out there, but you come across so much of the selfishness that it's difficult to see. It's difficult to see, okay, like the good is few and far in between, because all I'm getting is like selfish person after selfish person after selfish person. So, um, another thing she mentioned is that other people's needs are more important than mine. I can receive that as well because I feel like like I used to be like a people pleaser. So what I would do, oh, actually, this is leading into the next one. Um, so I'm treating people as though their needs are more important than mine. So I'll always put them as the priority and just disregard whatever I need or want. And it's that sense of putting the next person on a pedestal over me. Doesn't matter if they're family, doesn't matter if they're a friend, doesn't matter if they're a stranger. I'll always put them over a pedestal over me. And I know there's other people don't do that. Other people they'll put themselves on the pedestal over everybody else and maybe put their family on the same level as them, but they're still on the high pedestal. But everybody else will be on the lower pedestal, whether it be a friend or if it's like a stranger. Friends are sometimes slightly higher than strangers, but depending on the person, it's on an individual basis. So another thing she mentioned is that I always have to have something to offer someone, even if I don't get anything in return. I understand that because there was something deep rooted within me where I felt like I had to be godly to like, I felt like I had to be godly enough to just give, whether, and it's not necessarily giving as far as like materialistics, but it's giving in the sense of offering my time or over investing in the relationship by just giving so much of my time, like kind of depleting myself, even if it was at the benefit of someone else. Um, so, like things like that. So that kind of goes back to what I said earlier about putting anyone on a pedestal over me. And that's also, I think that's part of the reason why I don't like conflict. Because with conflict, sometimes it could be that unresolved kind of conflict where it just goes back and forth. It just ping pongs back and forth. And it gives me anxiety. So then it's like sometimes I'll just cave and give the person what they want just to end it, just to end the situation and to be the bigger person. Um, but if I feel like I'm depleting myself or like making my feelings like dwindling it down to nothing or belittling my own feelings, then that's a problem. Because it's like my self-worth. Another thing she said is she expects to be disappointed in relationships outside of things they have to do. Oh, okay. So what I meant by that, or what she meant by that, is she expects people to always like just not come through for her. Whether they flake, they're supposed to meet her somewhere and they just flake out at the last minute, like that kind of stuff. And I can resonate with that because that's happened to me as well. Um, so it's like a sense of untrusting. Like you can't really trust people. You want to, but you can't. And when I said outside of things they have to do, it's like a parent, for example. This is an example she gave, and this is an excellent example. Like a parent would have to bail their child out of jail, that kind of thing. So you would expect for them to show up in that circumstance. So it has to be like this dire need or like an emergency type setup where they have to show up. But anything where it's not as a detriment, then they're more like nonchalant about showing up. Because then they get to reserve their right to be there or not. Um, so I can understand that completely. Um, I've been disappointed so many times, and it's at the point where it makes me feel like I should just be alone. Um, and I don't want to think that because there is good in the world. But it's just so many experiences with the bad. It just makes me feel like, okay, it's like a sense of hopelessness there. Um, and then another thing she mentioned is she said, I'm not important in close relationships. So that kind of goes back to um, what she said throughout the rest of the examples. Um, when she's saying that she's expecting people to show up for her, they don't. Um, Hence, she gets disappointed. But then at the same time, she's prioritizing their needs over hers. So she feels like in order to make that relationship salvageable or just make that relationship like stick, she has to go above and beyond for them, but they're not reciprocating it. That's what I got from what she said. And at the end of the day, that just leaves her emotionally drained and just losing like her sense of self and like self-worth and things like that. That's what I got from it, and I resonate with that because that's how I feel. So I am working on these things, and she gave me a blueprint to help me with my life, and that's excellent. I do have a therapist as well, um, but I've only had 2 sessions with her, and we didn't unpack as much as Alyssa did with her therapist. But I still love my therapist, and so far, and I'm really happy about this as a blueprint because I'm working on personal development, and this helps me make better decisions. So I'm not repeating unhealthy behavior that stemmed from my childhood. Um, you have to go back and watch my episodes. I have episodes on like child abuse that I've endured. Um, you know, I've been in unhealthy relationships. Um, so I understand completely. And there's this sense of familiarity, and I have that too. This is what she mentioned. This kind of familiarity that we have within us, where we want the familiar, whether it's good or bad. So we'll subconsciously repeat this behavior to get what feels normal. Even though it's toxic, it still feels normal. Um, so if you are in a relationship where it's like, and I don't recommend this, but if you're like in a toxic relationship where getting hit, you're getting hit by your spouse, like abused, physically abused, then you might unconsciously attract future relationships where you're being physically abused, things like that. So it's not, and that's not to say it's the victim's fault. It's not. These circumstances are not the victim's fault at all. I am a victim of this. I have been physically abused in a relationship. Not in the Ike and Tina Turner kind of way, but more in the sexual kind of way. But but I do understand. Um, but like this still helps me. So, her therapist was having her list 3 things about her childhood that she learned, and so that I did the same thing. So what I learned is some people have, and she said the same thing, and I agree with her. Some people have big hearts and help if they need it, and they also help if they're able to. Another thing is, um, she was my grandmother, who was my guardian. She was there to treat me in the way that I needed to be treated. She was my guiding light. She made me feel like I belonged. She said the same thing about her aunts, and I resonate with what she said wholeheartedly. Um, and then another thing she said is we must be held accountable. So we must be in relationships, and I agree with this. We must be in relationships where we're being held accountable for what we do. If we make plans, we must follow through. Um, we're always striving to be our better selves, and we should be in relationships that help enable the goals that we're searching for or the goals that we're looking to fulfill. Um, so yeah, it unpacks a lot. This episode unpacks a lot, and I'm very grateful that she posted it. Um, so her name is on YouTube. It's Alyssa Forever. Alyssa space and the word forever. Follow her. This is excellent. I love her channel, and yeah, this this really helps me a lot. So like making these conscious decisions, it's not easy. It's going to be challenging, but it can be done. But it's going to be some hard work ahead. Um, it may mean that you might have to cut out some relationships. You know, it's going to be hurtful to cut certain relationships out, but it just needs to be. Like, if it's not serving you, you have to let it go. If it's something where it's hard for you to even sleep at night because it just doesn't feel right, then you have to let it go. So that's what I'm going through right now. So, yeah. So that's your nugget of wisdom for today. I hope this helped you. I hope I was able to, you know, I hope you've never heard of this YouTuber before, so you could follow her channel because her content is excellent. So that's pretty much it. I'm looking forward to spicing up your life one episode at a time, and I hope I can help you. Like we're on this journey together. If you are also someone who is struggling and you're like bringing childhood baggage into your adulthood, then it doesn't have to be a reality anymore. It doesn't have to define you. Um, I was gonna say something and I lost it. Um, yeah, I should probably just end then. Okay. All right. I hope this helped. All right, bye.